The suitcase handle was still warm from my hand when I heard the deadbolt turn behind me. Not the front door. The side door. The one only family used. I stood on my own porch, in my own coat, holding a duffel bag packed at 11 o'clock at night, and I listened to my son lock me out of a house with my name on the mortgage. Through the window, I could see Kayla's silhouette pouring herself a glass of wine like it was any other Tuesday. And then I heard Marcus say, low, almost gentle, like he was doing me a favor, "She'll figure it out by morning." I didn't knock. I didn't cry. I just looked down at the keys still in my hand, the spare set he didn't know I kept, and I smiled. He had no idea what he'd just started. My name is Diane Whitfield. I'm 61 years old, and for 34 years I built something out of nothing. A chain of 6 bakeries across 2 counties, starting with a single storefront I financed with a $4,200 loan from my late husband's life insurance and 80-hour weeks that turned my hands into maps of flour burns and calluses. By the time I was 55, Whitfield's Kitchen was worth $2.3 million. I'd raised one son, Marcus, mostly alone after his father died when Marcus was 9. I put him through college, $96,000, paid in full, no loans, because I didn't want him starting life the way I started mine. 3 years ago, when my knees started giving me trouble on the shop floor, I sold 4 of the 6 locations and moved into semi-retirement. I put $780,000 of that sale into a house, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial on Ashford Lane, and I let Marcus and his wife Kayla move in with me temporarily while they saved for a place of their own. That temporary arrangement lasted 2 years, and that Tuesday night, standing on my own porch with a locked door behind me, I found out exactly what my son thought temporary meant for me. 3. The inciting betrayal. It started 3 weeks earlier, on a Sunday, when I came home early from church. I heard laughter before I opened the door, Kayla's laugh, sharp and performative, the one she used when she wanted an audience. She was sitting at my kitchen island in a blouse I didn't recognize, a $340 designer piece I'd later find the receipt for, holding a glass of Sancerre at 11 in the morning, talking to her sister on speakerphone. Honestly, once Diane signs the transfer paperwork, this house is basically ours, Kayla said, swirling her glass. She's 61, not senile, but old people get tired of decisions. We just have to be patient. I stood frozen in my own hallway, my church shoes still on, my purse still on my shoulder. Marcus's voice, from the other room, thick with something between amusement and impatience. "She'll sign it. She always does what keeps the peace." I closed the front door softly, the way you close a door on something you're not ready for anyone to know you heard. Beat 1, the quiet search. That night, I told them I had a migraine and went to bed early. Instead, I sat at my late husband's old roll-top desk and opened the folder where I kept copies of every document in that house, a habit from 30 years of running a business. I compared it against the folder Marcus had asked me to just sign real quick 2 months earlier, the one I'd skimmed and set aside. It wasn't an insurance update, like he'd told me. It was a quitclaim deed, transferring ownership of the house into his and Kayla's names. I hadn't signed it. Not yet. Beat 2, the confrontation. The next morning, over coffee, I asked Marcus, casually, what that paperwork from 2 months ago was for. He didn't even blink. "Oh, that? It's just a liability shield thing, Mom. My accountant said with your age, it's smarter tax-wise if the property sits under an LLC Kayla and I manage. Protects you from creditors, protects the equity. It's boring legal stuff. You don't need to worry about it." I nodded slowly, stirring my coffee. "That makes sense," I said. "I'll look at it again when I have time." I believed nothing. Beat 3, the deeper dig. I called my late husband's old attorney, Harold Pruitt, a man who still worked out of a one-room office above a hardware store and charged me nothing for the coffee shop consultation. He read the deed in 4 minutes. "Diane," he said, sliding it back across the table, "this isn't a liability shield. This transfers full title. If you'd signed this, you'd own 0% of your own house." Beat 4, overheard, unseen. 2 nights later, I stood in the pantry. The walls were thin, the vent ran straight into the kitchen, and heard Kayla and Marcus at the table, half a bottle of wine between them. She's slower to figure things out than I thought, Kayla said, laughing. I told you, elderly parents are basically compliance machines. You just have to frame everything as helping them. Marcus laughed too. She'll cry a little, sign it, and thank us for taking the burden off her hands. That's just how she is. I stood in the dark pantry, one hand flat against a shelf of my own canning jars, and I did not make a sound. Beat 5, the worst truth. The following week I drove, unannounced, to the county records office and pulled up recent filings under Marcus's name. What I found wasn't just a deed grab. Marcus had already taken out a $180,000 home equity line of credit, using my house as collateral, forging the appraisal date to align with a period when I'd granted him limited financial power of attorney for a single medical emergency 2 years earlier, one I'd never revoked on paper because I trusted him. He wasn't just trying to take the house. He'd already borrowed against it, and the money was gone, into a failed crypto trading account and a boat currently docked 40 minutes away under Kayla's maiden name. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to fight loud. I was going to disappear in plain sight. I started wearing my reading glasses lower on my nose and squinting at things I could see perfectly. I let my voice go softer, slower, with little trailing pauses. I misplaced my phone twice at dinner. I asked Marcus to repeat simple directions. I let Kayla see me struggle with the TV remote for a full 2 minutes before asking for help. Inside, I was running numbers like it was 1994 again and the bakery's rent was due. I told myself, let them believe the compliance machine is finally slowing down. A woman they think is fading won't be watched. A woman they think is fading gets left alone with paperwork, with laptops left open, with unlocked filing cabinets. I even bought a cane I didn't need. Kayla told her sister, on speaker again, that the fog is really setting in. I stirred my tea and said nothing, and inside, I was already building the case. I set the bait on a Thursday. I accidentally left a folder on the kitchen counter labeled Ashford Lane, estate transfer draft, containing a fabricated will that left the house entirely to Marcus, with a sticky note in my handwriting that read, "Call attorney Monday to finalize." It wasn't real. It was designed to be found. Then I did 3 things quietly over one weekend. I opened a new bank account they didn't know about and moved my liquid savings, $410,000, out of the joint household account Marcus had helped me set up. I hired a private investigator, a retired detective named Ruth Alvarez, to formally document the boat, the Helic forgery, and the crypto account. And I placed a small voice-activated recorder, the size of a matchbook, inside the fake fruit bowl centerpiece on the dining table, the one nobody ever touched because the fruit was plastic. Sunday night, my phone buzzed once under the dinner table. Ruth's text, confirmed. Notarized forgery, timestamp matches. We have him. I smiled at Marcus over the roast chicken and asked him to pass the potatoes. I hosted Sunday dinner 2 weeks later. Extended family, my sister, Marcus's college roommate, and his wife, Kayla's parents. 12 people at a table meant for 10. Kayla, 3 glasses of wine in, decided it was the perfect time to announce it to the table. We just think it's time Diane had somewhere smaller, she said, smiling around the table like she was delivering good news. This house is a lot for one person. Marcus and I found her a lovely little assisted living option. Very affordable. Very close. Marcus nodded, not even looking at me. It's for the best, Mom. You've been getting confused lately. We just want you safe. The table went quiet. My sister's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. I set down my own fork, folded my hands, and let the silence sit for exactly 4 seconds. I found the quitclaim deed in March, I said, calm as still water. The one you told me was a liability shield. Marcus's smile flickered. Mom, I found the $180,000 home equity loan you took out against this house, I continued. Using power of attorney I gave you for one hospital visit 2 years ago. Power of attorney I never renewed, and that legally expired 14 months ago. Kayla's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. I found the boat, I said, docked at Harborview Marina, registered under your maiden name, Kayla. $41,000. This is insane, Kayla said, too fast, too loud. You don't even understand paperwork anymore. I own 6 commercial buildings, I said, still not raising my voice. And I read contracts for 34 years before either of you were born. I understand paperwork perfectly. I reached into my cardigan pocket and set the fake estate folder on the table, the one I'd planted as bait. Then, slowly, I tore it in half, right down the middle, the sound of the paper unnaturally loud in the silent room. I said, recorded the two of you calling me a compliance machine. Twice. At that exact moment, timed, arranged 3 days earlier, the doorbell rang. It was Detective Alvarez, along with a county fraud investigator I'd looped in once the forged notarization was confirmed. Marcus Whitfield, the investigator said from the doorway, "We need to speak with you about a fraudulent notarization on a home equity filing." Marcus's face went the color of the tablecloth. 8. Fallout montage. Over the following 2 months, the consequences arrived the way consequences always do, quietly, then all at once. Marcus was charged with fraud in the 3rd degree for the forged power of attorney date on the Hellick filing. He pled to a lesser charge, paid $22,000 in fines and restitution fees, and lost his job at the regional bank where he'd worked in commercial lending, a termination triggered, in part, by his own employer discovering he'd falsified financial documents. Kayla's boat was seized as part of asset recovery. Her parents, who had co-signed nothing and knew nothing of the scheme, quietly distanced themselves after learning the full extent of it. Kayla and Marcus separated 4 months later. The $180,000 Hellick was voided by the bank once fraud was confirmed, and I recovered $61,000 of the original loan amount through the county's asset forfeiture process. The rest, the crypto losses, were gone for good, a debt now legally Marcus's alone. But I made one thing right, deliberately, in public. Marcus's college roommate, James, had co-signed a small $9,000 personal loan for Marcus 2 years earlier, unrelated to any of this, purely out of old friendship. I paid it off myself, quietly, through my attorney, so James wouldn't be dragged into a mess he never made. I didn't tell Marcus. I didn't need him to know I could still be generous. I needed James to sleep at night. 6 weeks later, on a night when the rain was coming down sideways and the streetlights on Ashford Lane flickered under the wind, my doorbell rang at 9:40 p.m. I already knew who it was before I opened it. Marcus stood on the porch, soaked through, a single duffel bag at his feet, the same brand, almost the same size, as the one I'd carried out of that house the night this all began. His face was thinner. His eyes were red in a way that had nothing to do with the rain. "Mom," he said, voice cracking. "I have nowhere else to go. Please, just for a few nights." I stood in the doorway, warm light behind me, and looked at my son for a long moment. "You told me I had to move out of my own house," I said quietly. "I found somewhere else. I'd suggest you do the same." "Mom, please. I love you," I said, and I meant it, the way you can love someone and still close a door. But I'm done being someone's compliance machine. I shut the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't need to. Behind me, in the kitchen of the smaller house I'd bought outright with cash, the one with no one's name on the deed but mine, my sister Ruth had put the kettle on. She looked at me over her reading glasses. "You all right?" she asked. "I am," I said, and for the first time in 2 years, I believed it completely. Here's what 34 years in business and 1 very long year in my own family taught me. Love doesn't mean access, and trust isn't the same thing as a blank check. The people who count on you underestimating them are usually the ones who deserve it least. If someone in your life is treating your patience like weakness, that's not a reason to get louder. It's a reason to get quieter and pay closer attention. Have you ever had to protect yourself from someone who was supposed to protect you? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every one. If this story hit home, hit like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.